Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this new webinar of EUROPARC. I think that all of you already know how Zoom works, but just in case, I will share with you some rules for today. So I need to tell you that this webinar is being recorded. So if you don't want to appear, just stop your video camera as you wish. But in general, we prefer to have the face of people because it's more interactive, but it's your choice, of course. Please change your name and put your name and organization so we can know who we are. And if you want to share some questions or comments, please use the chat. And also say to which speaker you would like to address your question or comment, if the case. And we will see if, pardon, if at the end of the webinar, if we still have time, we maybe can also open the microphone to the participant and share some comments live. Directly. In this case, please raise your hand. I hope that everything is clear. If not, please ask in the chat, and some of my colleagues will tell me that there is a question because I cannot check the chat at the same time. So the agenda for today, so I will start with this welcome, of course, and then I will share with you some information about EUROPARC and our action about protected areas and agriculture. Then my colleague Lisonne will present her study about the protected areas and large conventional agricultural enterprises, especially in the Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. And then we will have two very interesting case studies. One about, both about the collaboration between conventional farmers and managers of protected areas. Then we will have a moment of discussion and questions. So please keep your question for the end, but you can write your questions during, of course, the presentation, but we will answer at the end. And then João Melo from the EUROPARC Commission for Protected Areas Sustainable Agriculture will close the webinar. We expect to close at after 1 hour and a half, but we will remain quite flexible according to the interest of your view from you. Before to start, I would like to thank first my colleague Fernando and Esther that are in the background today, and they will help us to manage the webinar. João from the EUROPARC Commission, and of course our speakers. Thank you very much to share with us your experience. And I would like to thank Lisonne. Lisonne is the intern in EUROPARC Brussels office. Today is her last day, and she helped a lot to organize this webinar. So thank you very much. Okay, now I will ask to my colleague to check my time because I like to speak a lot. So, and I would like to remain in 10 or 15 minutes my presentation. So thank you, help me. So I will share with you some information about EUROPARC and the work that we are doing for agriculture. I am Stefania Petrosillo. I am the policy officer of the EUROPARC Federation. I work here in Brussels. My task is especially to maintain the dialogue with European institutions. And among them, the topic of agriculture is indeed very crucial. So about EUROPARC, very few information. It's the largest network of European protected areas. We have about 400 members representing thousands of protected areas in about 30 countries. We have the headquarters in Germany and several offices in Brussels, in Barcelona, but also other colleagues working from other countries. And we have also in some states, some national or international sections of EUROPARC. Just to be clear, when we speak about protected areas, we speak about national and regional parks, nature reserves, biosphere reserves, marine protected areas, and Natura 2000 sites. And about this, we can say more or less that EUROPARC representing more or less 30% of Natura 2000 sites. Something very important to mention here, especially today, is that, of course, the core of our work is natural protection. But to reach natural protection, we need to work on agriculture, on marine and fishing, on tourism, on climate change, large carnivores, health, culture, youth, sport, cross-border cooperation, and so on. So our approach is really holistic. And if you want to know something more, there is a very nice video presenting the philosophy of EUROPARC. But of course, there are also a lot of other ways to be in touch with EUROPARC and discover what EUROPARC is doing. And please use them, because our colleagues, especially Fernando and Esther, Esther is the person in charge of communication, they are doing a very incredible work to share information. So you can use the website, of course, but also a lot of social media, choose which you prefer. And of course, we have also a lot of publications, newsletter, and so on. So there are a lot of ways to be informed about the work of EUROPARC. So now I would like to enter a little bit more in the topic, of course, about what we are doing on agriculture. The first thing to say is that when we speak about agriculture in protected areas, we speak about very different situations. That means that there are protected areas that have to deal with really big enterprises, big farming. And today we will speak about this sort of situation and collaboration. And of course, we have also a lot of different cases where the agriculture is more family enterprises, for example, in the Alps, very small realities and so on. So also, that means that also the farmers are very different. Agriculture in protected areas means complexity, definitely. Also because agriculture for protected areas is not only about food production, but is about biodiversity, of course, and natural resources, water, soils, climate, landscape, etc. But also about culture, history, memory, tradition, local communities, etc. And especially in this period, we know how important health is, and of course, agriculture in protected areas is connected with health and human well-being. What is very important for EUROPARC to say is that public people usually are aware about conflict between agriculture and protection of nature. But for us, it's very important to say that it's not completely true. There are a lot of situations that there is a good collaboration between farmers and protect areas managers. And this is exactly what we would like to present as much as possible in our events, also to learn how to improve this collaboration, how to replicate them in other protect areas. Of course, a partnership does not mean always being in agreement. This is clear. So of course, people are different, interest can be different. So it's important to accept this, but at the same time to looking for a positive interaction and to think always that we are all farmers and managers acting to improve the quality of life for everybody, for the children, for the planet. So the aims, the final aims are the same. But of course, the crucial point is building mutual trust. What EUROPARC does to improve the capacities of managers to deal with agriculture and to create better relation with farmers is a list, a big list of actions. We work a lot about training and information, and you can find in this web page a lot of information about the case studies that we collect. Some specific event, for example, the European Day of Parks some years ago was completely devoted to the relation with agriculture. We had also a specific training section in Siegen. In Germany, we organize each year a specific training for managers about specific topics, and that here it was about agriculture. In each EUROPARC conference, we organize a workshop about the relation between agriculture and protect areas, and we organize a lot of webinars as today. Then we have also a very active and important, especially for me, because they help me a lot. We have this commission for sustainable agriculture and protect areas. Members of this commission are representative of farmers and of protect areas managers and network of protect areas from different countries, and they help me and the EUROPARC a lot with their knowledge. And with them, we are working to create a future program of EUROPARC that will be a sort of charter for sustainable agriculture in protect areas. We stay tuned because we will inform you about that in the future. Then we don't work alone, of course. We have a lot of networking and collaboration with other organizations. We have a memorandum of understanding with Slow Food International. We are member of several platforms in Brussels working on this topic. And in general, we collaborate with a lot of NGOs and farmer associations. And this presentation will be shared, of course, and published with you and published in the website. So, and I suggest to click on this receipt book because it's very nice, interesting about food in protect areas and some nice ideas to receipt. Then another important aspect of our work that I am doing in particular is the dialogue with the European Union. And we have a lot of interactions with the European Commission, European Parliament, and the Committee of Regions. We publish a lot of position papers, and some of them we are also preparing in this period about the new position paper about protected areas and agriculture, and some recommendation for the CAP and the national strategic plans. And as you can see in the screen, there are a lot of publications. Also, when they are not specifically connected with agriculture, agriculture is always mentioned. So it's a topic very important for us. Now, a few information about the framework of the European Union in which we work, and also protected areas will work. Probably all of you know about the European Green Deal. This is the new framework that the European Union created, and to improve the well-being of the European Union citizens in the more environmental ambition direction. In the framework.
Sorry, Stefania, a few more minutes.
Okay, thank you, Lisona. Thank you very much. The Green Deal should be the umbrella, the framework also for the future common agricultural policy that already was presented, started the process before the Green Deal, the publication of the Green Deal. So there is an issue about the real coherence between the consistency between the CAP proposal and the Green Deal. You see anyway that the proposal was trying to be greener as before. You have in the specific objective a lot of objectives connected with the environment, but also of course about ensure income from farmers and protect rights of farmers, of course. And just for your information, the process of CAP should be ended this year in summer, probably. They will arrive to publish the new CAP. We have also other important strategies connected with agriculture. Farm to Fork strategies, again, is to have an healthier and more sustainable EU food process. And also here, there are a lot of targets connected to environment. So to have a greener food production. In the biodiversity strategy, there are also in the key elements a lot of targets connected with agriculture, again. And the European Union is working also about other very important initiatives, for example, the pollinator initiative. The key messages in this work from EUROPARC are that protected areas and agriculture together create a resilient rural area, a living landscape. Protected areas are ready to collaborate with farmers and consumers, and protected areas contribute concretely to achieve EU targets. The common agriculture policy should reward sustainable farming in protected areas and Natura 2000. Specific measures, programs, and funds for partnership between protected areas and farmers are needed. And the policy coherence with the EU Green Deal is necessary at European, national, and local level. And just to conclude, our key message that we share with you today and in all events is that healthy environment and natural resources are essential for healthy food production. And sustainable agriculture is essential for healthy environment and to protect biodiversity. That means that farmers and protected areas managers should be allied. Thank you very much. And I'm very interesting to see what the debate of today will bring to our reflection about this. And I thank you very much, and I leave the floor to Lisanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefania. That was a beautiful presentation. Let me just share my screen now. Can you guys see it? Okay, super. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming. And thank you also, Fernando and Esther, for the technical support behind the scenes. That is beautiful. And my presentation, well, first of all, my name is Lisanne Kruiswijk, and I was an intern for EUROPARC for the past 6 months. And there I did an analysis, and it ended in a presentation. And that is focused on the production and protection paradigm and the landscape approach and opportunities for cooperation between protected areas and large conventional agricultural enterprises. But first of all, I would like to tell you that this analysis is part of my master program, Forest and Nature Conservation. And part of this internship that I did at EUROPARC was a research. And this research consisted of interviews and surveys. And I would also like to thank the people that contributed in these very much. But nevertheless, the response rate was not high enough to draw hard conclusions from, and I would welcome you to use my findings more as inspiration than strict facts. Okay, so to begin with, protected areas and agriculture together make up 85% of the EU land, making them major stakeholders in the rural area. But we see that the protected area perspective, that examples of cooperative projects are mostly focused on agriculture that is already sustainable or small family farms. This makes sense, but conventional agriculture or more intensive agriculture can have more impact on soil and water quality and thus of the quality of protected areas. The question we ask ourselves constantly about land planning is whether agriculture versus nature is a zero-sum game in which there are only winners and losers, or whether we can find some mutual benefits instead. My research goal is therefore to explore opportunities for cooperation between protected areas and conventional agriculture. And to get to this research goal, I posed 3 research questions. And the first is, how are protected areas influenced by conventional agriculture and how do they work with large conventional farms? What are the prevailing paradigms of protected areas towards conventional agriculture? And what paradigms I will get back to later. And finally, what opportunities can be found to cooperate with conventional agriculture? Naturally, and as I said before already, there were some limitations to this research, like time constraints. And as you may know, it's hard to define conventional agriculture. I attempted to do so in the text below, and it's a lot, so you don't have to read it all, but the main characteristic is, of course, high production. Moreover, I decided to focus this research on Germany, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, because these countries are better known for their efficient and intensive agriculture. Then I used a conceptual framework or a theoretical lens that I used to analyze this topic, and it's called paradigms. And you might have heard me say it already once or twice. And a paradigm is a scientific truth through which we try to understand the world around us. An easy example, we used to believe that the sun and planets move around the Earth. But in the 16th century, scientists such as Copernicus and Kepler proved that the Earth and planets move around the sun instead. These are 2 different paradigms, and the change in scientific truth around the 16th century is called a paradigm shift. But this way of mapping scientific theories and developments can also be used for agriculture and protected areas. For example, after World War II, EU land planning was mostly focused on maximizing agricultural production and safeguarding food safety. But now we have realized that there are ecological limits to this production. In terms of protected areas, paradigms moved from believing in nature as a utility to strictly protecting areas and putting a fence around it. to novel and more integrated ways of looking at land planning. The landscape approach is a nice example in which stakeholders within a landscape and their values are placed on an equal footing and also involved in governance. And then another difficult word, but the last one. The tool that I used for my research is called Q methodology. And this means that it is a qualitative and quantitative study of viewpoints or paradigms. And it means that participants have to rank statements. So the first part of this research was a set of interviews with protected area stakeholders in which case studies and lessons, but also the statements were collected. And the second part was a survey in which general information on agriculture in and around the protected area was collected. And the statements were ranked on a 7-point scale, like the picture you can see in the bottom. So now we move from theories into the results of my studies. And I first present you 3 case studies and the lessons that I learned from them. And they will be elaborated more in the report that I also written. And there will be also 2 more case studies after this presentation. But the first case study is located on the island of Schiermonnikoog in the Netherlands. The nitrogen deposition on this island was too high, so the amount of cattle needed to be reduced. But farmers decided to cooperate and change their business model into biodiverse and circular agriculture, which should be financially feasible through local branding and sale to the tourists on the island. We learned here that the natural demarcation of the island created a shared need to care for the landscape by different stakeholders. They are in it together. The popularity of the island was ideal for tourists and new markets, but also as inspiration for investors such as banks. The second case that I looked at is a dissertation from Christina Hondrilla, who looked at paradigm shifts, not in protected areas, but in farmers instead, in Luxembourg. She took 2 areas as case studies and looked at how and whether the paradigms shifted when the farmers cooperated with protected areas. She found that the paradigm of farmers shifted only slightly from a purely food production paradigm to a quality of soil and water assurance paradigm. But still, most farmers are and will probably remain food producers at their core in these case areas. We learned here that it is important for different stakeholders to come together with an open mind towards each other. This can be done by discussing practical topics such as water quality and technical tools for effective land management. Farmers also need flexibility in regulations to figure out new business models that are more sustainable. And finally, many farmers did want to become more sustainable, but the Luxembourg market was not big enough for that. Protected areas can help farmers find these markets. And then the final case that I will present here is one that only started recently. And in Germany, 5 case areas, protected areas, are used to review insect conservation measures in agricultural land and to try new measures to see what is the most effective for insect conservation. Farmers are also interviewed on how they perceive insect conservation measures, and we are still waiting for the results. What we already learned is that it is important to centralize projects on the ground, especially on specific subjects such as insect conservation. Moreover, it is important to have diverse funding sources for these projects so that they are secure in the future. So then I move from my case studies to the survey results. And first of all, the survey had 16 respondents from the Netherlands and Germany, so unfortunately none from Luxembourg. And the locations are shown on this map. 2 respondents came from the same area and 2 respondents represented multiple areas. When we look at the type of agriculture in and around the protected areas from the respondents, we can see that the average size of the farms is mostly medium. Many respondents, as can be seen in the table, provide farmers with information and involve them in projects. Fewer respondents involve farmers as advisors or co-decision makers in governance structures. We can see from these pie charts that there is a little more cattle farming than arable farming, and that the share of other agriculture, so horticulture or forestry, is lower. Moreover, there is a lot more conventional agriculture than organic agriculture in and around the respondent protected areas, but that makes sense because that was also what we targeted our research towards. The survey also collected the main issues identified by protected areas. In this figure, we can see that environmental issues such as biodiversity loss, water use and drought, and nutrient spillage are more often indicated as main issues than socioeconomic issues such as communication and financial profit. Now, this figure is a little larger and more confusing, but we see here the different statements that I collected in the interviews that can say something about the paradigms that protected area managers adhere to. There is a gradient between dark red, which means strongly disagree with the statement, and dark green, which means strongly agree. We can easily see that there are 4 statements that all respondents agreed with. Namely, there should be more and more easily accessible information on protected area and agriculture projects through Europe. There should be a focus on the win-wins between nature and agriculture. To transform agriculture, the entire food production chain needs to be addressed, including markets and consumers. Farmers in protected areas need to care for the landscape, and protected areas should focus on the farmers that want to become more sustainable. Then there were also some statements that had some respondents disagree slightly, namely the current negative image of the farmers in the media is misplaced. To cooperate with farmers, protected areas must focus on technical aspects of agriculture, such as soil quality and technical innovations. And farmers cannot all become organic because there is not enough market for it. And finally, there were 2 statements where some respondents strongly disagreed. Namely, it is better to have intensive agricultural enterprises in and around your protected area than to have farm displacement or land abandonment. And we should stop asking for more extensive agriculture and also welcome intensive agriculture due to its efficiency. This shows that there's still a little bit of disagreement on whether conventional agriculture and farmers' production paradigm should be and are accepted by protected area managers. The quotes show this difference clearly, with one saying that enhancing sustainable farming in many ways is in mutual interests of farmers and national parks, but another one saying both farmers and protected areas care for the landscape, but have often different opinions of what is meant by good care and how to care properly for a landscape. Then I also collected feedback on a few statements on environmental and agricultural regulations. And here we can see that all stakeholders agreed that there should be more transparency on EU policies like the Common Agriculture Policy, and that there should be more EU funding for sustainability measures, and that almost all respondents agreed that subsidies for sustainable agriculture are not enough. Farmers need to keep producing for the market, and that there should be more flexibility in regulations for farmers. And then finally, there were some statements with a little more disagreement, which were there needs to be stricter regulation on environmental measures in agricultural policies, like the Common Agriculture Policy. More environmental regulations are reducing the possibility to go organic because of the loss of freedom for custom solutions. And there should be less bureaucracy in EU agricultural policy to make it easier for farmers. And again, the same type of contradictions as we saw in the previous slide can be found on this slide. So taking into consideration the small size of this analysis and the explorative nature, I have attempted, based on this data, to answer my research questions. First of all, the question of how protected areas are influenced by conventional agriculture and how they work together with conventional farms is answered the following way. Many survey respondents deal with a large share of conventional agriculture in and around their protected area, which is mixed cattle and arable farming. Many protected areas involve farmers by providing information or cooperative projects, but only half involved farmers in governance structures. In terms of identified paradigms, I have found 3. First is the protection paradigm, which mostly focuses on the nature value of the protected area. This paradigm identifies conventional agriculture more as a threat than as a possible partner for the area. The landscape paradigm is more inclusive and identifies different stakeholders and values in the landscape. This can result in fruitful cooperation with stakeholders that think differently about land planning. And finally, there is a market paradigm to which most respondents adhered to some extent. And this one does not only identify food production as an influence on nature quality, but the entire production chain, including consumers. And then finally, when looking at opportunities for cooperation, I found three main categories that should be explored. First of all, technical solutions on agricultural land that do not harm production but improve soil and water quality can have small but important impacts on nature quality. Second, protected areas have an advantageous position as they usually attract visitors. They can use this advantage to explore consumption markets that are willing to pay for local produce with a higher price. Finally, it should be interesting to explore governance structures that involve farmers as advisory stakeholders or even co-decision makers where possible. This can lead to a more beneficial relationship and more trust and understanding. So finally, through these conclusions, I have also identified a set of recommendations, general recommendations, which are to first keep an open mind toward different values and paradigms, to discuss how protected areas differ in their approach on conventional agriculture through the protection paradigm and the landscape approach, to explore technical solutions for conventional agriculture, possible markets and retail strategies for agricultural products, and finally, governance structures that involve farmers in protected area management, to keep centralizing best practices and new ideas on cooperation, and finally, to continue to advocate for more money for sustainability, result-based measures, and more transparency in EU agricultural policies, like the Common Agriculture Policy, but also the Farm to Fork strategy and its implementation. I wonder, however, what you as visitors of the webinar think of these recommendations and conclusions, if you agree with them or have anything to add. So please let me know at the discussion in the end of this webinar what you think. And for now, I thank you for your attention. And again, I would like to thank the EUROPARC team for their support in facilitating this analysis, and especially my supervisor, Stefania, who has helped me the past year with getting to where we are now. So this is my presentation. I'll stop sharing and I'll give the floor to Martina, who will present her case about the Upper Sur area in Luxembourg.
Hi, I will start sharing my screen then. So yeah, thank you, Lisanne. I'm Martine Stoll. I work at the Nature Park Upper Sur in Luxembourg. I will focus my presentation on the collaboration with the farmers. So with conventional farmers at eye level. I think that's a very important factor here. I want to clarify that the nature park that we work in is a park where we have inhabitants, we have industry, and we have lots of agriculture. So it's not a park that's a reserve where not a lot of activity is taking place. The project I work for specifically is a corporation called LACU. So it's an Upper Sur agricultural corporation, which has the nature park as one of the partners, but also the drinking water provider, Sebes, which provides about 60% of the Luxembourgish drinking water, and of course, the local farmers. Here's a small overview of what I will present today. So I will go into details of how this cooperation came to be and describe the structure of the cooperation, how we work together, give a little bit of detail on the region that we work in, and then present the challenges and solutions that we have for working with conventional farmers. And I give also a few technical solutions, just a few examples of how we can work together with conventional farmers. So it started in 2012, where a new water protection area around the Upper Sur Lake, so the lake that we work around, was meant to be put in place. The government started a public participation process before creating this new protection area. And the main aim is to improve water quality. So then the nature park helped by organizing working groups on different subject areas that are influenced by this protection area. And one of the subjects was, of course, agriculture, as we have about 45% of agricultural fields in the water catchment area of this dammed lake, which is used for drinking water. That's the main reason why this water protection area is now put in place. The nature park was a good connection to the farmers at the time already, because we did agricultural counseling for many years before. So there was a connection on individual level with the farmers. And we have the project River Contract. I don't know if many people are familiar with it. It's supposed to create awareness for the ecological protection of water bodies in the region, and includes participation of local stakeholders, among which are farmers, of course. And this project also puts into place, it does technical work, for example, restoration of river banks. We used a bottom-up approach after that. So we wanted the farmers to participate in the process of this water protection area, to not just implement restrictions, but give the farmers an opportunity to show that they can voluntarily help in the protection of the water. So this working group, the agriculture working group, an exchange between the nature park, ZEBAS, so the drinking water provider, the many administrations that are connected to the issue, and also agricultural councillors working within our region. And this led to an excursion in 2014 to the Wernbach-Talsperre, so a dammed lake as well in Germany, where they already had a cooperation in place between the drinking water provider there and local farmers. And it was really on this excursion that this cooperation LACU was created, because it was the discussions on the trip on the bus there that really made the connection, that put the exchange forward, and also the idea that this could work in our region. So then in 2015, we got to work on setting up the cooperation agreement that all three partners, to set the stage for all three partners to cooperate. And then since then, we've worked in this cooperation together. Just a little picture of the signing in October 2015, where we can see the different partners at one table signing the agreement, nature park, the drinking water provider, and two of the farmers signing here. So I will tell you about the structure of how we work in this cooperation. So it all starts with the farmers of the Upper Sur water catchment area, which can voluntarily become members of LACU. We hold one general meeting at least a year to get everyone together, to collect new ideas, and also inform them on the process of other ideas. And then this can also lead to the creation of working groups. So different working groups could be on the elaboration of water protection measures. We also had a working group on improving the fertilization plans. for farmers to make farms more efficient. And importantly, the general meeting also votes the farmers' representatives on the LACO committee. So the LACO committee is made up of 8 members, 4 of which are farmers. And the president and vice president are also a farmer. This was very important in the setup of the agreement, that we wanted to have farmers on this committee, but also really in a position to take to make decisions. And every decision that is made on this committee is unanimous. So if one person does not agree with putting a measure into place, it is not done. So everyone has to find a compromise, or be of the same opinion. Obviously, it's not every time that everyone agrees, and there are lots of discussions, but usually a compromise is found. To aid in directing the measures to be most efficient, we have an advisory board. So this is made up of the LACO committee, but also of the ministries and administrations that are connected to water protection, and again the agricultural councillors that really work on farm level. So here we try to inform them on planned and ongoing measures, so that this advisory board can assure the coherence to the national goals, assure conformity to agricultural, environmental and climate programs. So those are our national programs set under EU legislation, and to check whether subsidies are actually well spent, to make sure that we do not just spend money on something that will later not have an effect on water quality. This is where I come in, and some of my colleagues. We are the coordinators of this cooperation. So we try to connect all of these different committees and do the administrative work so that the cooperation can function. And again, we find that the councillors, the agriculture councillors, are a great help in getting information to the farmers. And also working on farm level. We can advise as coordinators on a more general level about measures, about what farms can do. But the councillors then look at what the individual farm can really set into place to be more sustainable. Here I also want to say that we have mostly conventional farms. You can also see this on the next slide here. We already have a lot of members. 98 farms are currently members in our cooperation out of 185. That does not sound much to some people, but some of those farms that are not members only have a hectare of land in the region, or maybe just a very small percentage of the entire farm. The area you see here represents the water catchment area of the lake. Here you can see the Upper Sur Lake. The dark green areas are where we already have farms as members, and the orange fields is where we still lack the farm that cultivates the land there as a member. So we already have 72% of the area covered with the 98 farmers that are members. But importantly, only 8% of this is organically farmed. So again, here it is important that we work together with the conventional farmers to really have an impact on water quality on the Upper Sur Lake. What makes it a bit more complicated in our area is that only the top half is actually situated in the nature park, and the bottom half, everything below the river and the lake, is not situated within the nature park. So there we had less contact with the farmers beforehand, before the cooperation was created. And there we also lack most of the farms that have a bigger impact that have still lots of land, that cultivate lots of land in the area. I want to go into a bit of the challenges and possible solutions of a cooperation between drinking water provider and the nature park and farmers. So as Lisanne already said, there are different interests, and everyone is trying to have to put forward their own interests, of course. For example, farmers, they do need to provide for their families. So that's something that they always think about. And we need to respect and have an openness to the interests of the other person. And and the committee that was created created also the opportunity to understand one another better. Because of the setup, we have lots of discussions, and that over the years made the other person more aware of the issues that the other one has. There was a better understanding for the others, for the other partners in this. And this helps to define the really common goal. I mean, the one common goal is water quality improvement, but there are also other goals that we found along the line. And one of them is, as Lisanne already said, to find market strategies to really help the farmers get their products marketed better, so that they can actually do more sustainable work on their fields. It is also very important for us to work at eye level with farmers. Otherwise, they will not work with us. They want to be seen as equal and as someone who can actually be part of the decision making. They do not want to be just told what to do and how they have to do it, but they want to see how they can be part of the solution. So that's, as I said before, that's why we decided to make all decisions on the committee unanimous. An important role as well on this committee is preventing contradictory measures. Sometimes good measures for water protection may not be good measures for nature protection. One small example that we have is a measure to plant miscanthus. This is miscanthus does not need any pesticides or any nutrient input to grow well. It can stay on a field for 15 to 20 years, and it still gives a yield. But it's not a native plant, and we do not want this plant everywhere in the nature park. So that's one example where we need to be very specific about the measures we put in place, and they need to be well thought through to prevent a negative effect on another end that is not water protection. Another challenge that we had specifically was that the cooperation was created before the proper legislation for it was in place, which created some issues with administrations, and also the work we do was very slow at the beginning. But that's very specific for us.
Martina, a few more minutes? I don't know where you are. Okay.
We had this year or last year, we had a bigger challenge that the 4 farmers on the committee, they resigned collectively. They felt disappointed, and that they be at a dead end, that they would, it was a question of, they felt blocked at every turn that they took, or every input that they gave. They felt they were not acknowledged. It was not the case that they didn't feel acknowledged by the partners in this cooperation, so Nature Park and Seeberst, but more because of the administrations. And as I said before, we started the cooperation before the legislation was really put in place, and administrations were caught up to us. And I think that was one of the big issues, that was the expectations towards the cooperation were very high, which put a high pressure on everyone, but also especially the farmers who needed to show results. And there was also some communication challenges and also miscommunication. So we see that really communicating properly among the partners, but also to the outside, to the public and to administrations is very important. And that the institutional support is needed to make the cooperation work. Even if the work within the cooperation works well, the institutions need to support it. So this bottom-up approach that we had was challenged, but we're now in the process of defining a LACU 2.0. So we will see how that goes, but we're very hopeful that it can work. Here are some more conclusions that we have for working with farmers, how it can work. Some of it is already what Lisanne also concluded. So we need to shake off all previous prejudice, not just towards the farmers, but also the farmers towards maybe a nature park manager, and be open to find solutions, to focus on finding the solutions, and not just identifying the problems. As I said before, meeting at eye level, at every level. So not just among the partners of this cooperation, but also with administrations and ministries. We had lots of administrative work, and as the farmers were part of the LACU committee, they were also dealing with lots of this administrative work. And we need to keep that to a very minimum in the future for it to work. It's just too much time spent for the farmers doing administrative work and not enough them focusing on their farm or on sustainability measures. Discussions must be based on facts and arguments. We need to show the farmers examples, visible examples in nature where there's a problem. We can show them numbers that they understand. And when they see numbers and arguments, they will react to this. They do not want to be talked down to and be reprimanded and told this is what you need to do. But it's more like a discussion on, here, look at this, here's a problem. I think you're part of the solution. What are your ideas and what you need to implement them? And they respond quite well to this approach. And we need to give the farmers a middle-term perspective on these measures, that they know where they're going in the next couple of years. So I want to go very briefly then over the technical solutions. Well, I mean, there are many technical solutions that we already provide that farmers can voluntarily take part in. And one thing we found is that agricultural contractors that do the work on farms can help to easily implement sustainability measures that are too expensive for farmers themselves to invest in. And subsidies are always a discussion. I mean, the farmers do ask for more subsidies to be able to afford a change in paradigm. One of the technical solutions we have is injection of slurry, because it allows for fewer outgassing of nutrients and less runoff, because it is put into the soil. So it gives a higher nutrient efficiency. It reduces the input of slurry needed to obtain the same yield as without the injection. So there's less nitrogen discharge into the water and the air. And the slurry is valued in some way. Whereas before it was seen as a waste product, it can be, it is of value to the farmer and also to the production of food. And here the injection is possible during drier periods. So it's the nutrient, the fertilization is placed to the plants when it is needed and not just put on the field to get sort of rid of it and empty the storage. And so overall, we could have less nutrient import into the region with this measure. Here are just a few examples of weeding, weed regulations, mechanical and also electrical. And the, I mean, we can test a lot of different machineries and methods within the corporation, and some work, some don't. Like the electrical weeding regulation machine did not work very well. So we decided it is not a measure that we put into our program. And we also take a lot of soil samples and analyses, less than we would hope, but they help also show the farmers at a deeper horizon where nutrient leaching might be occurring, and they can use this information to improve their methods. The information can be put into a fertilization plan, and we can use it also as a tool to evaluate our measures, so that there's less nutrient leaching or nitrogen leaching into the water and more available to the crops. And importantly as well, that we talk about what we do. A big part of a good communication is that we discuss the methods with the farmers, so that they can see how it works on their farms. We demonstrate at field level, we have trials and show them the different machines and methods. And we also want to make the exchange possible between conventional and organic farmers, so that the one can learn from the other in both ways. And just to keep it short, then I'll close with that, and just with an image of the Upper Sur Lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martine. I think that was a beautiful presentation with a lot of concrete examples that we can draw inspiration from. So that's great. Just to tell you all, we're running a little bit later, but I do think it is nice to know all these concrete examples as well. So know that we're running a little later than planning. But our next speaker will be Hulk, and he will be talking about Nature Park Boortangermoer Bargeveen and the cooperation with his farmers there. So Hulk, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pride and Prejudice, the conventional agriculture in the International Nature Park Boortangermoer, Finland. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hauke Zilfas. I'm a forest scientist and forest ecologist and working as a ranger in the International Nature Park Moor Finland, on the German and on the Dutch side, and in the Nature Park Humling, which is the second nature park in the district of Emsland on the German side. At first, I want to introduce you to our nature park, so that you get an impression of what I'm talking about in general. Then I show you some conflicts that we have, but also our cooperation that we have got with conventional farmers. And well, at the end, I'm going to end with a small conclusion. Well, once upon a time, the Boortangermoer was the biggest moor area in Central Europe. It reached from the land of the ancient Saxons in the northwest of Germany up to the land of the Frisians, and it was considered as a holy ground. But during the land reforming process of the 19th and 20th century, nearly the whole moor was destroyed and converted. It was literally plowed over. So they constructed the largest plow in the world, which got a height of around about 4 meters. And they plowed the whole area during the 20th century. And well, this was mainly the end of the wilderness in our area. So that's where our nature park comes in. So we try to, one of our tasks is to protect and to develop the last remaining areas of this moor ecosystem. There are also other ecosystems I will show you later on. So we have got a core area of 140 square kilometer and a development area of 550 square kilometer. And you can see those moor areas, or raised bog, as it's also called in English, they are those red fields right here. So this is the border. They are the red fields. And everything which is white on this map, this is somehow agricultural land. So you can imagine there is a whole lot surrounding us. And that's why there are a whole lot of conflicts, or that's why there is a potential for many conflicts, but also a potential for many cooperations. So moor protection is a very, very special challenge. As you all might know, moors are very high sensitive, nutrient poor ecosystems, and a moor can store more than 20 times as much CO2 as at the same forest area. And that's why a moor has got an enormous social value facing climate change. But as you already saw, nearly all of our protected areas are surrounded by arable land and fattening complexes. And a nitrogen input into these ecosystems changes the species composition and, well, at the end, destroys the moor. And as I already said, the land was plowed, it was converted into arable land, and we have got a persistent drought since 2018, and this is a picture I took last year in our nature park, and we created, or our society created, artificial deserts with and there is an increased soil erosion when it starts to get windy, especially during the springtime when it's a little bit windy. It is an enormous physical strain to be outside. And of course, this is an unwanted nutrient input into our sensitive ecosystems. On the Dutch side, we have the buffer zone south, and there is an implementation of a necessary buffer zone in the south of the Bargaveen Nature Reserve. It's needed, as you all might know, moors, or better to say, those upland bogs, they are growing. So the Bargaveen, which is this area, is around about 3 to 4 meters higher than the level of the arable land which surrounds it. And so this buffer zone is really needed in order to manage the water. There was a long-term dialogue process between the Dutch government representatives and local farmers. So now there are compensations and exchange of areas, but still some farmers are a little bit angry because they, don't want that the land that they converted from moor into agricultural land now becomes a buffer zone to save the moor areas. Another thing, another conflict are hiking trail conflicts concerning tourism. So, for example, I am responsible for a 400-kilometer cross-border hiking trail system. And in the Nature Park Hümling, we have got 13 quality trails. And nearly every second week, there is appropriation of public ground by some farmers. So, but these are individual farmers. They plow over the boundaries of public ground. And for example, in the Nature Park Hümling, there were approximately 60 hectares of land lost because of plowing over the boundaries of public ground, which is quite a number, I think. Sometimes even hiking signs are adhered out with tractors. But as I already said, these are conflict with individual persons which do not like us, and we can't do much about it. But there are also a whole lot of cooperations and friendships between farmers and nature conservationists. And those people living in the Emsland, nearly every person living here is somehow related to a farming family. And well, don't get me wrong, those farming families, they are giant stakeholders in our area. But those people were, their ancestors have been farmers for thousands of years. That's their tradition. They did nothing, they always were farmers, and that's where they came from. That's what their roots are. And in Germany, there was a very big discussion concerning conventional agriculture. And those where people say, well, the conventional agriculture is really bad and you have to change it. And so the farmers start to complain, said, well, we don't want you to talk about us, we want you to talk with us. And that's where the Nature Park came in and just said, well, when you want to have transparency, then we maybe can enable you transparency. And that's when we started the project Kijk in, which is the ancient Saxon dialect for take a look inside. And this is a cooperation between the Emsland Country Folk Society, the individual farmers, and the Nature Park. So there are 18 companies in the Nature Park which provide an insight into agricultural production. And there are 11 locations with a Kijk in box, or a so-called take a look inside box, for a direct view into the stables. And well, don't get me wrong, I think for me, well, I'm living vegan. For me, it is not nice to see animals living like that, but well, that's transparency, and we guarantee transparency in a neutral way so that everyone can form an own opinion. Another very, very important issue, as I already said, is water. So since we had the drought, things started to change. At the beginning, farmers always used to say, well, your moors are wetting our fields and we can't work there. And during the drought, it changed so that the farmers are happy to have water at all. So we started a research, so nature developers and farmers are now in a close dialogue about the optimal landscape water balance. So there will be a scientific study for an optimal solution by 2023. So we're installing 3 dams to regulate the water level, and it's something like basic research, because we do not have data about it, and we never facing a drought and things like that. And so we're very, very closely cooperating with the farmers, because otherwise it is not possible to get any data about it. Another thing are those ancient landscapes, especially in the valley of the Ems River. So it is a monument to the rural population. So their ancestors worked there. They formed for hundreds of years those species-rich areas. We still have got those areas in our nature park, and although they are surrounded by conventional agriculture, farmers understand that it is a monument of their people. And so we need cattle just for the maintenance of those ecosystems, because they were formed by humans and by their cattle. So we can't do so without the farmers living there, although they are actually conventional farmers. So what's the conclusion about all that? Well, as we regard nature, everything is connected in nature, and so are we as a society. And as a society, we have to seek dialogue with one another. And conflicts often only exist with individual farmers, or better to say, really hard conflicts often only exist with individual farmers. And even if prejudice are sometimes confirmed, it is better to talk to each other than about each other. But a dialogue can only take place on the same eye level. Otherwise, it is simply not a dialogue. But farmers don't want to be left alone with their fears. And of course, they are afraid. Well, at the beginning, they were forced, or the ancestors, or years ago, they were forced by politics and by the system to switch their economy into conventional agriculture. Well, and after all those years, politics and society are forcing them now to change again without knowing exactly where this journey is going regarding climate change, regarding all our ecological problems. And if you look at society, hardly anyone seems to have understood where this journey really has to go, because it is uncomfortable to pay the true price of our luxury. And as long as society, or as long as people, are not willing to pay the true cost of their food, nature conservation is a luxury problem for those farmers. Although it is of course clear that nature is not a luxury, but our indispensable basis of existence. And my personal opinion is our ecological problem is only the symptom of an overreaching social problem in our relationship with nature. And every day when I'm in the wilderness, I see ecosystems collapsing everywhere. Whether in our moors, in the Harz Mountains in Germany, in Scandinavia, in France, or on La Gomera, those who know nature can see it. And we cannot preserve this world if we just sit on our protected area islands and point our fingers at others. So we are all part of the system. We are all part of the society. And only as a society, we can save this world. And for that, we need a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Hawk, for this presentation. Again, a nice example, very different from the other one, but I think that gives us a lot of insight as well. Okay, so it's now 11:20, but we still want to have some time for a discussion. So I'd say it will take like 15 minutes. If people have questions, please ask them in the chat so we can answer as many of them as possible. And then we'll close for 10 minutes, and then probably 11:45, this webinar will be finished. So I will now look at the questions that we've collected, and the first one is for Stefania. And it is, the Common Agriculture Policy is unusually translated into national policy, which has no spatial differentiation. Better policy for protected area is usually sabotaged by national farmer interest groups. How can we get differentiated policy in favor for specific areas around protected areas?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, it's a very important point. So what I can say is that now the CAP, the CAP process is finishing, but so it's difficult to influence the text of the CAP, but we will have a very, very important instrument that will be the national strategic plans. So each member state has to prepare the national strategic plans and explain to European Union how the member state will use the money for CAP. And so in this period, the member states are already working to prepare this. And our demand is really that the member states use the experience and speak with protected areas to write these plans. So I also would like to invite protected areas to be present in these processes. So try to find the way to influence your CAP strategic national plans, because this is a very powerful instrument if we reach to use it well. Thank you.
Okay, great. I think that's a clear answer. And then there's a question for me, and it is, Protected areas are multifunctional areas with integrated objectives. From your analysis, more focus is placed on environmental principles. How is your project addressing this gap in the context of agricultural development? Well, that's an interesting question, because I don't know if I agree that all protected areas are multifunctional at their core. I think that there are still protected areas that are very much only focused on protecting natural and cultural values of the land. But there are also areas on the other side of the spectrum that are very much focused on multifunctionality and also socio-economic aspects of the landscape. So in that sense, I think it would be very valuable for protected areas with different kind of approaches to come together and discuss their differences in vision to get to new insights in addressing these other values of the landscape, because there are advantages to looking at nature specifically for nature protection, but there are also advantages at looking at different values and trying to find the mutual benefits between nature and agricultural production. And one can be more effective for one situation and the other can be more effective for another situation, I think. I don't know if that's clear. I think silence is yes. And then I have a question for Martine. Do you know how much it costs to run the LACU approach? Is it a cost-effective approach?
I would say it can be a cost-effective approach, but the measures need to be well chosen. Also, it is hard to say how much it costs, because I mean, I know the budget for our region, but it's really specific for the size of the region and how many farmers are included. And I can say for us that we could do a lot more with the budget that we have available if farmers put more measures into place. So we have the money to, for example, technical measures to do more hectares or to do more counseling than is currently used. But I'm sure it can be cost effective, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then a question to Hulk. Do you think that agriculture in and around conservation areas could serve as an example for the society? And if so, should we actively promote agricultural solutions in conservation areas to the wider public?
Well, as always in life, there is no this answer. So there it is more than black and white, and so the Amazon is a little bit different, because you can't do anything without the people living here, and the people here are very, very closely connected to agriculture, as I already said. But in general, I think when we're regarding at the history of land use, especially to the land reforming process of the 18th, 19th and 20th century, we can see that a way to use the land to have agriculture, holistic agriculture concerning every part, then it helps biodiversity, like these old pastoral forests, like so there was the gap between forestry and farmlands during the 18th and 19th century in Germany, forced with weapons against the farmers. So the government said, you gotta stay out of the forest, you have to well, create big fields, big arable land, and the forest is just forestry and the fields are just farmland. And I think when we start to rethink everything a little bit, then it might help us. And the way we are walking now with our society doesn't lead us to the future. So there has to be a change, otherwise we have no chance to do so. When we go on in conventional way, it is not possible, but we can't but we can't speak with those farmers, and we can't convince them when we are blaming those people for that. So they were forced years and years ago to do something. I don't know if I can clearly answer this question now, or if I'm running somewhere else. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think it is very, very important to include those farmers, although I do not always agree with them. Of course not, but it's important.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. And of course, it's difficult to answer this again in general when there's so many different situations. Another question for me, but I think Hok and Martien can also answer this question from their experience. And it's, did you also discuss whether farmers are willing to cooperate in governance arrangements with protected areas? I am working in a new protected area in the Netherlands in which farmers seem quite reluctant. And you could share your report with us. It seems very interesting and relevant. Yeah, the report will be shared afterwards, and also the recording of the webinar and the different presentations. So you will all receive a mail with every bit of information. And about whether farmers can and will cooperate in governance. I think that the research that Christina did was very important for that. So there are, of course, different things that you should take into account. And first of all is that farmers are often very busy, and they are business people. So there needs to be time available, but also incentive to get around the table. And I think if you focus on the ways we can cooperate to benefit both the protected area and the farmer, that you can frame it in a way that it will also benefit the farmer. And that will already create a big step in that direction. And of course, ways to do that is to talk about more technical solutions like we heard in the presentations, but also by speaking on the same eye level, or on the same level. So not telling the farmers what to do, but also listening. And that might be very straightforward, but in practice, I don't think it's always happening yet. So it's important to keep in mind. Anything to add, Hok or Martien?
I fully agree with what you just said. That are also the conclusions that we drew. That farmers are often interested in getting involved, but they don't find the time to do so, because running a farm is an everyday job, not from 8 to 5, but from sunrise to sunset, or even later. And so they need to find the time, and helping them, getting them an incentive, or helping them in a way that they can maybe find a replacement on their farm while they do the work in governance. They have someone that can help on the farm, would already maybe improve or get more people involved in this type of work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I see that there is oh, sorry, Hok.
Yeah, I think one very important thing is how you speak with those farmers and how you go there. So when you go there and say, well, I'm a scientist, I am a scientist, and I know it much better than you do, then of course there is no, this is this eye level thing. And there will be no dialogue, and they think, oh, this is this arrogant guy from the nature park, just please go away. And well, you have to understand how those people work, and I think it is often a personal thing which makes the difference. And I think this is very important, just to see the human being and to, well, act like a human being on the same level. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Super, thank you. I see that Alison has her hand raised. Do you want to add something live? Can you unmute yourself? I'm sorry, I still can't hear you. Can anyone else? Okay, Alison, I don't know if your microphone is working, but we cannot hear you. Maybe if you type your question in the chat. It's still not working, I'm sorry. Can you type it in the chat? Then we will answer it for you. No? Okay, if you type it in the chat, we will answer it for you as soon as possible. But now we move to a question for Martina, and that is, how is LACU making sure that more farmers should not leave the cooperation?
So to clarify, the farmers that left the LACU committee are still part of the cooperation. So they want to be still part of the process. They want to still put measures into place for water protection. They just don't want to do the committee work anymore because they felt that they wouldn't get anywhere and that they were not heard outside of the cooperation. And to make sure that we now find 4 new farmers to fill the position, and also to obviously try and get more farmers to join the cooperation and the others not to leave. We held a general meeting to discuss with them, to have their input as well, how we should proceed, how this new version of LACU should function. So that's one step in the direction. Obviously, continuing the dialogue with the individual farmers is key here. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so due to time, I'm going to ask one last question to all the speakers. Sorry if we couldn't answer all of your questions, but please, if they are interesting or urgent, you can also mail us and we will definitely get in touch with you about them. But one final question to everyone. What is your main recommendation to policymakers? What do you need from them to be able to bring together nature protection and agriculture more effectively? Perhaps not just in terms of regulations and subsidies. So maybe one take home from everyone, starting with Stefania.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, in my opinion, what is very important is to create a sort of positive discrimination to the farmers that are working in partnership with protect areas. In some way, I think that if we reach that they are proud to work with the protect areas, that they are proud to be in protect areas in some case, we will work better with them. So there are a sort of cultural change to do, of course, also in terms of money or recognition, awards of the effort that they're doing, but really it's a different approach. So I think that this is something that policymakers should do. And indeed, it's very important to have a stable position from the policymakers. I mean, to take decisions that they don't change all the time, because business need to have a clear situation to invest, to take their decision. So in my opinion, also this effort must be done by politicians. Thank you. And sorry, just to add that about what Oak and Martina said, I think it's very important to be aware about dialogue needs a good approach from us, and try to have also to receive a good approach from them. So to create really this mutual understanding. Time is very important, really be patient, and also manage the expectations, because I think this is also very important point. Be very clear what we can do together. Thank you.
Thank you. And Martina?
I agree with what Stefania just said, that farmers need to have a perspective, but I would also recommend policymakers to still stay flexible. Sometimes legislations are too rigid, and not every farm or everything fits into that neat little box. And so yeah, to be more flexible. Yeah.
Thank you. Hawk?
Sorry, I was writing. I didn't get the question.
Okay, so a take-home message for as a recommendation for policymakers.
Yes, well, we haven't to see things isolated. Well, it is as I already said, it is like nature. Everything is connected, and we are all a part of the society, and we are all consumers. We all have a responsibility, and we make every single day. We have a choice. Do we do this or do we do that? And I think this is very, very important, just to if we know what is an effect of our action, then we have to be sure that it has got an impact on nature. And I think this is very, very important, but we do not have to blame others, because they are just a part of the society. They are victims of the socialization of their childhood, of society, of their peer group, of whatever. So we have to take them as individuals, and we have to take them as our brothers and our sisters, like in general. And well, that's what I wanted to say. We are all a part of the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Very nice ending message. And I don't know if I have a lot of things more to add, but I would also like to stress from my research that it is important to keep understanding that there are different paradigms and different beliefs that people have, and that everyone wants to do what's good for them and for the landscape, but what they think is good for the landscape can be different. And with that awareness and spreading that awareness, I think we can get into much more fruitful discussions with each other and with different visions as well. Okay, so these were the questions. Thank you all for these interesting questions. And now I would like to ask João to make the final remarks for this webinar. So João, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning to all. Thank you very much, and congratulations to the all panelists. It was being a very nice conversation, and quite different perspectives and approaches. Of course, mainly regarding Central Europe, and I'm from Portugal, and I saw some colleagues here from Greece and Spain. So we have to see this as a very complex and challenging future. The interaction between farmers and park managers. So starting by Stefania, who definitely presented EUROPARC and all the strategy that has been implemented since about 2017. So it was like the beacon, and unfortunately we started to work and to exchange among protected areas managers the same issues and problems. That's why we are now debating and bringing this issue to the table. So we have definitely, with the Green Deal and biodiversity strategy, Farm to Fork and CAP, a very ambitious and visionary output that we have to fulfill, and that has allowed us to come together, farmers and park managers, not only on a ground level, but also discussing it in Brussels. That's what EUROPARC has been doing. It's a very hard job, and also with other NGOs. But I think this shows that these issues are on the agenda, and that we are definitely working together. And of course, there's a lot of work to do, but it's a starting. And if I was writing down here that definitely farmers and park managers have been walking sometimes on the same path or parallel paths, and unfortunately didn't have the time or the opportunity to meet each other, meet the neighbor that is on the side. And this is strategy, maybe opportunity to come together and take down the fences and understand, as shown already by the panelists, that farming, nature conservation and forestry, it's all about landscape, it's all about human health and survival for the future. So definitely EUROPARC, it's showing some good case studies also to highlight they are not all bad farmers. They are very nice farmers, And of course, they need to produce food, and we all need food. So I think one of the issues here is also to talk about all of us as consumers, and what is our responsibility when we go to the supermarket and to collect the product. So, and Hawk was talking about choices. Every day we do choices, and of course, this is one also of the choices. When you go to the supermarket or we go to the local market, and or rather you are interested in knowing the farmer or not, or the retailer. So this is what kind of choose that you can do that definitely can change things. And it's not about only separate the waste, like we all learn in school, and we still teach to our kids. Now it's also this kind of choose, and I think this is a kind of evolution that we have been seeing all around Europe. So we started from basic things, plastic and paper and all that stuff, and now I think we are going deep. And I think, well, my perspective in terms of European politics, it's going, and especially with this new strategy, it's going deep in helping the consumer to have made the best choices. And all of us as protected area managers and farmers have a very important role in paper to help this, not only in going with this information to the top at the political level, like EUROPARC does, but also all of us who are with the boots on the ground, this kind of eye contact, it's very, very intimate. So in fact, it's a pleasure to be here in this history moment, I think, when all these things are being discussed. And very interesting also, it's the presentation from Lisanne and the social aspects. So I was very interested in looking at that charts and the perceptions and all the aspects relating what do farmers think about us and what we think about the farmers, and how deep do we know really the farmers in our protected area. And for instance, in some protected areas, just like myself, I don't have farmers, so I have to become, as a park manager, I have to become also a farmer. So just to see how diverse we will find kind of managers or kind of farmers, or when does it start to be a manager and start to be a farmer. And so sometimes we are very, very connected and linked. And this is a big challenge for park managers, not only to look at habitat and species, but also look for marketing and branding, and understand how farmers at the end of the day pay the bills. And we have to be smart and give them something to collect in the future. It's this kind of investment we have to do. So a lot of challenges, and I think it could be much interesting to go deep and have more research regarding what kind of farmers we have in our protected areas, the real impacts, and then keep on with the working of sharing this good practical experiences. Of course, Martin showed us very nice evidence of this kind of collaboration, and of course also the long-term perspective we need when implementing these kind of strategies. We talk about emotional perspectives. We talk about it can be one man show, so it's difficult for farmers to have this kind of commitment because it will take lots of time, and implementing these kind of strategies, we need long-term perspectives. So of course it's all about human conflict and emotional intelligence, and how can we manage and deal all these perspectives. But it was very interesting the way they show governance model, very clear, I think, but although it could be sometimes complicated to manage when you have so many people with different perspectives and interests. And one of the big issues here also, especially in Northern Europe or Central Europe, it's about high precision agriculture. It could be opportunity because we need to produce food, of course. Some say it's cheap food, it's not organic food, but we cannot ignore the need to put the food on the shelf. So definitely high precision agriculture will be important in some places where it is allowed or it is possible. Of course, there will be some negative perspectives and impacts, and this is again one of the roles of the park managers to help out the farmers to implement these kind of strategies and to be updated in terms of cultural and other issues. So for this kind of perspective, the long-term vision, it's important. So Martin will have a very hard task, and hoping that the new generation of farmers come forward and be represented. And so this is a very different approach of, I think all of us as park managers don't have sometimes idea of what will be our role. And so we are working with nature conservation, and then we have to manage with the farmers. Of course, have a few beers in the end of the day. That's not the best part, the worst part. That's the best part. But we have to understand all these perspectives and come to collaborate in a very proximity way. So emotional strategy, it's very interesting. That's we also new challenges we have to work. Of course, finally, hockey, which was a very interesting, because I didn't know the question of the moors and the historical aspects. So sometimes we definitely have to understand history to really understand the people who live there and to understand the landscape. And sometimes we think that when we start our work, we come up with a white paper, and that's not the truth. So we have to check out what's what in the other line, try to understand what kind of layers are there, the people, the landscape, historical aspects. And so we can't blame the farmers to be there with landscape. There are some other aspects that historically came along. So I think it's very, very interesting, the fact that the farmers are proud to manage the land, and the issue that Hawk said that definitely they were the first nature conservation agents. They were the farmers were the first to shape landscape. And for instance, in some parts of the Mediterranean, farmers are abandoning the landscape, and then you have issues with fire, for instance. So it's amazing how Europe is quite different and very, very interesting because of that. So definitely park managers will have a huge challenge in front, not only the landscape management scale, but also the peer-to-peer, have to go knocking out the door of the farmer. And it's very interesting what you said. Sometimes we need to learn the kind of vocabulary. We need to learn about what kind of machinery, what kind of crops. But you need to go this kind of the first contacts have to be in this kind of conversation. Then you will close the relation. Then you can go forward to another approach. So it's a step-by-step approach, very difficult and very intelligent. We need to be to assure that conflicts are not on the next door. And finally, I think that communication, and we should be intelligent. So park managers, farmers, and consumers. And I think we didn't spoke about the consumer's role here. Of course, we're talking about farmers, but in the end of the day, farmers want to put the product and to sell the product to the consumer. So again, we have to understand our role as park managers to make this link. Farmers, it's not only about how the farmer should plant or not, what kind of culture he or she use. Is help him how to bring the best knowledge he has to produce the best food, and we as a park managers can collect all that precious food and pass it by to the consumer, but also highlight this product. This is one of the best things we could do. It's definitely to highlight the quality of the product, explain to the consumers this has been made by traditional families that manage the landscape for centuries, and they respect nature, because we found the common ground. It was one of the issues that all these panelists talk about, common ground, and they all do understand the landscape and the ecological aspects. So we have to, again, find new strategies as park managers to bring out all the good things and try to communicate it, not only in the shelves of the supermarkets, but also in terms of on the local markets, of course, but give this the power to the farmers. And I do understand, and I felt already in some local markets when I went, especially in France and Germany, farmers are very proud to speak and to show their products, and they definitely like to talk about their cheese or their fruits or whatever, and they are communicating with the consumers. So we need to help them out to communicate not only the product, but also all the aspects regarding that. It's not about only the product, it's about also the people who live and shape the landscape. And in some kinds, we need farmers not only to occupy the land, because they are the land, they are the landscape. And,
so,
and this
Joao, can you wrap it up?
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
this is our next challenge. Thank you very much.
We're already finished. Super. Well, thank you all for joining this webinar. We are now at the end, a lot over time, but I think this was very important because we don't often talk about this topic, and now we had the space to do so. I hope you all liked it. I don't know if Stefania has anything to add.
Just to say thank you very much. It was a very interesting webinar. I hope for everybody, for me it was. And thank you very much. Everything will be published very soon. You can find all presentations, the Lisone study and the recording of this webinar in our website. You will receive the link. And if you are interested in sport, the next webinar will be about the connection with sport and protected areas. You can find all information in our website, in our social media, etc., that I show you. Thank you very much again to Lisone. Thank you to Oak and Martin, Joao. Thank you very much to all of you. Bye-bye. Ciao.